Marcus James stepped out of his car and paused for a fraction longer than usual, feeling the sleek glass building loom over him like a test he hadn't asked for. He was qualified, overprepared, and calm. But the moment he entered the lobby, he felt the invisible wall between himself and the people inside. Every glance, every hesitation, every unspoken doubt landed on him before he even sat down. What they didn't realize was that someone upstairs had been watching everything unfold, silently, like a judge taking notes, waiting for the moment to expose the truth. And in that instant, Marcus understood just how deep the bias ran. Before we dive in, hit that like button and subscribe so more stories like this reach people who need to hear them. Marcus James had built his career with precision, 15 years navigating the high-stakes world of strategic marketing, leading campaigns for Fortune 500 companies, and earning the respect of colleagues who had seen him deliver results time and time again. At 39, he carried himself with a calm confidence, the kind that came from knowing his worth and refusing to let anyone define it for him. Yet that morning, as he adjusted his tie in the elevator's polished mirror, a flicker of doubt crept in. Not for him, but for the room he was about to enter. He had taken 2 years off to care for his ailing mother, and though the gap on his resume was explained, he knew it could still be a target for those who judged before listening. The lobby was sleek and cold, white walls and sharp lighting reflecting a corporate world that prized appearances over substance. The receptionist's polite smile felt thin, almost rehearsed, as if she couldn't quite place him, and perhaps that was the point. Marcus sat on a bench, folder in hand, and scanned the empty lobby, the silence pressing in, broken only by the faint hum of air conditioning. Somewhere above, behind tinted glass, someone watched quietly, observing not just the interview that was about to happen, but the subtle dynamics of power, privilege, and bias at play. Marcus took a slow breath, closed his eyes for a moment, and reminded himself of why he was here. Not for validation, but to reclaim the space he had earned, to challenge the assumptions quietly stacked against him, and to show that competence and integrity cannot be measured by superficial judgments. Marcus followed the director down the polished hallway, each step echoing with the same quiet authority he carried, even as the room he entered seemed determined to undermine him before a single word was spoken. Elaine Crawford sat behind her desk, glasses low on her nose, laptop open, but her gaze skimmed Marcus as if he were an anomaly, someone slightly out of place. The questions began immediately, sharp and loaded, more tests of his presence than of his skills. "Are you sure this is the role you applied for?" she asked, her tone flat, almost mocking. "Have you worked in offices this large before?" Each query carried an undercurrent of doubt, subtle yet unmistakable, like a weight pressing down on his shoulders. Marcus answered with calm precision, listing global campaigns he had managed, metrics he had exceeded, teams he had led across multiple continents, but nothing seemed to register. The director's notebook closed abruptly. "Actually, there's been a miscommunication. This position was filled internally last night." "We'll keep your resume on file," Elaine said, standing without offering a handshake, a professional courtesy withheld as if it had been revoked in advance. Marcus left the room without argument, only the faint tightening in his chest signaling the sting of being dismissed for reasons unrelated to his qualifications. Downstairs, the receptionist glanced at him but quickly returned to her phone, pretending nothing had happened, and the cold lobby offered no solace. What Marcus didn't see, what no one in that room saw, was Julian Maris on the 10th floor, arms folded, jaw tight, silently observing the entire interaction. Julian had completed the acquisition of the firm days earlier, yet he had kept it quiet, wanting to witness the culture firsthand. Every smirk, every dismissive comment, every assumption made about Marcus without evidence was being recorded and logged, a living proof of the systemic bias embedded in the company's hiring practices. As Marcus returned to the garage, a mixture of frustration and resolve filled him. He wasn't angry in the usual sense. He was focused, aware that this moment had revealed something larger than one failed interview. It was a glimpse of the hidden barriers that so many talented individuals faced, of the way competence could be overshadowed by assumptions, of how invisible walls were built and maintained under the guise of culture fit. And Marcus knew that the story didn't end in that lobby. Someone had seen everything, and the reckoning, when it came, would be deliberate, calculated, and impossible to ignore. 2 days later, the people responsible for dismissing Marcus found themselves summoned to a boardroom they didn't expect. Devon Hall and Elaine Crawford walked in, joking about a minor client error, unaware of the storm waiting behind the closed doors. Julian Maris stood at the head of the room, arms folded, expression unreadable, as silence settled over the space like a physical weight. The HR director placed a folder on the table and opened it, revealing transcripts and recordings from Marcus's interview. The room shifted uncomfortably. Julian's voice was calm, deliberate. "You evaluated a candidate who exceeded every requirement of this role," he said. "Yet you dismissed him, questioning his experience and professionalism, and told him the position was filled before giving him a fair chance. Why?" Elaine and Devon fumbled, offering excuses that sounded hollow even to themselves. Julian's eyes held theirs steadily. "What you called culture fit," he continued, "was comfort bias. And now every decision you've made in hiring is under review." There was no anger in his words, only a piercing clarity that left no room for evasion. The weight of their oversight, the subtle prejudices they had ignored, and the assumptions they had acted upon hung in the room, undeniable. Outside the building, Marcus sat at a cafe, unaware of the confrontation unfolding above, yet his earlier calm now felt vindicated. When the boardroom meeting concluded, changes were immediate. Devon and Elaine were removed from their positions. The department placed under full audit, and a clear message sent that competence and respect could not be bypassed. The moment wasn't about personal revenge. It was about accountability, about exposing the systemic injustices that allow talent to be overlooked, dismissed, or minimized. Marcus had faced bias with dignity, and the company had been forced to confront it in full view. The climax was less a dramatic confrontation and more a quiet, undeniable truth. The moment injustice is observed clearly, action becomes inevitable, and the structures built to ignore it begin to crumble. Marcus didn't return to the company the next day. Instead, he walked away with something far more valuable: clarity and choice. The failed interview had exposed more than bias. It revealed a system that too often overlooks talent, erases experience, and judges potential through a lens of comfort rather than competence. Within days, he began building his own consultancy, one that reflected his vision and values: authentic leadership, inclusivity, and a commitment to elevating voices that were routinely ignored. True North Strategies, he decided to call it, a name signaling not just direction, but integrity. Clients from his previous network reached out quietly, drawn not by publicity, but by trust in his proven expertise. In the quiet of his new office, Marcus reflected on the lessons of the past weeks. Respect, he realized, doesn't come from recognition or validation. It comes from persistence, self-awareness, and refusing to be minimized. And while the company he left scrambled to adjust, implementing audits and policies, he was already shaping a space where merit, not assumption, dictated opportunity. The injustice he faced had been public only to one observer, yet its impact rippled farther than anyone in that lobby could comprehend. Across society, countless talented individuals face the same subtle dismissals daily, overlooked not for lack of skill, but because systems reward familiarity over fairness. Marcus's experience became a quiet testament. Standing firm in the face of bias doesn't just reclaim what is yours, it sets a precedent for accountability and change. As the sun set over the city skyline, he sat at his desk, drafting proposals and strategies, not in retaliation, but in creation, building a future defined by his own terms. And somewhere quietly, the people who had underestimated him had learned that true competence cannot be ignored, and that justice, when observed and acted upon, can reset not just careers but the very culture of an organization. If you've experienced or witnessed the same, share your story in the comments and share this video so together we can spread the message further.